Final Girl episode.
You have a different song for it?
Do you have a different song?
It goes like this.
Oh no.
You ready?
Yes.
It goes, final girl, does whatever a final girl can. Runs away, tries to hide. God, I hope she doesn't die.
Yeah,
Look out, here comes final girl.
Damn.
That's it. That's the one.
I definitely wanted a verse.
Because my voice.
Yes.
I need a verse about how she can't fuck though, or she dies.
She can't fuck. What a shame. That is such a shitty pain. Look out. Here comes final girl. That's the rest of this episode. Just an hour of us writing verses.
Yes.
That's it. That's our intro.
I read a book.
Wait, who are you?
Yeah, who's speaking?
If we're gonna get into it. Hi everybody, this is Not Your Final Girl. We're talking about the horror genre and gender, specifically. I'm Candace. I'm with beautiful Gabby Castellano
Yay!
and Ariel Dyer. I just
Yay.
introduced you guys. You could introduce yourselves too, I guess.
Oh, me. I'm Gabby.
That's Gabby.
It's me.
That's
It's Ariel. We all know.
I'm Candace. I'm Candace Sluter also. I didn't know I said everybody else's last name. It's official, okay? We're really out here with our full identities in the podcast.
Great.
So, we're here talking about the final girl, which I think is like maybe one of the better known tropes within the horror genre.
Yeah.
I still say it, though, and people are like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But yeah, you're right. Totally better known.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what other consistent tropes that people like would recognize.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can even like name them anymore. I mean, other than like, like don't go in the basement or something,
Don't go in the whatever. Yeah.
Don't split up.
Open the shower curtain.
Mm-hmm.
Don't split up.
But there's no name for that.
No, there's
right?
no name.
There's a name for the final girl.
Yeah.
And there's this list of things you can and cannot be and do
Right.
as the final girl.
It's a sort of I guess like archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With like parameters set. Though it's an evolving one, obviously, as I think we'll probably get into. A lot of the research I did for this episode came from Carol Klober's book that's called Men, Women, and Chainsaws. And it's like kind of a study of gender and horror, and it's from the 90s. It's one of like the original sort of like studies of the horror genre.
And she
Sort
coined
of-
the term.
Yeah.
Yes, she did coin the term final girl. Which is why I read it, honestly, because I wanted to kind of go to like patient zero of the final girl.
Carol Clover, patient zero.
Yes. Yes. So I watched I watched some of the movies that she talks about and sort of the relevant chunk of the book. Those being primarily Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. I'd obviously seen them before, but I watched them again. I also watched some of the other ones, some of the other like slasher movies that she talked about, because I just wanted some frame of reference. Also, just the way that she was talking about them, I got really interested. Ariel, have you seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2?
No.
Okay.
I haven't.
Because none of us have seen it, which is
Yeah.
a shame because it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And
I
get
love
around
the
to
first
watching
one.
It.
I love the first one
It's
a
a
lot.
very good movie. It's
very
very
good.
fucking scary.
It's one, Halloween's like this too for me though, because I was talking to my best friend about it, and she had just recently she saw Halloween like a week before Halloween for the first time this year, and she, we were talking about it afterwards, and she said it's so weird because if you explain what this film is on paper, why is it so good?
Right. It's very basic.
And I feel like that about Texas Chainsaw, but they're both amazing. Like they're
Yeah.
excellent films. I love them.
They both just have like, well, that's the thing, because I watched some of the other examples of slasher movies that she talks about, and honestly, the slasher movie has never been like one of my favorite horror subgenres.
Right.
But I've seen a bunch because those are the sort of popcorn movies that like end up being, like pretty like good box office fodder, I guess. Like it's one of those that like one of those comes out and people just go watch it. And I think we'll kind of get into like what the appeal is to audiences, because it's in my notes, and so we'll talk about it. But Yeah, so some of the other ones I watched were not, I wouldn't say, like, great films. I watched Hell Night,
Okay.
which is from, I don't remember what year it came out. I'll look it up real quick, but it's from the 80s, and it's definitely, like, it's real cheesy in terms of, like, the actual horror in it, but, I mean, definitely a great example of a final girl, and yeah, like very entertaining.
Fun.
Even though it's silly as hell and not scary at all. 1981, Hell Night
1981.
came out. Also, everybody in Hell Night is wearing these like fucking like period costumes.
Hell yeah.
Because like the concept is that they're it's like an initiation for like some sort of like fraternity kind of deal, and all these people are staying in this big old mansion that supposedly has a madman living within. Spoiler, does have a madman living within.
Okay.
And so they're all dressed up like in fucking like the final girl in that is wearing this big ass like velvet dress with like heeled boots the whole time, which is awesome. It was really fun. Yeah, her outfit's really cool.
That sounds dope. I would watch that.
Yeah, it was really fun. But Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre are definitely
Those are
like,
prime.
great movies.
Yeah.
Well, I recently saw Prom Night. You know, not the 2008 remake, but the original
Yeah.
with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes.
It is utter garbage, like complete trash. But I mean, it's
You
fun.
showed us the cover and you were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. So the cover that I have, anyways, is it is a big old knife, and it's Jamie Lee Curtis's face superimposed onto the knife. So it literally looks like Jamie Lee Curtis stars as an anthropomorphic knife. So
Okay, but I would watch that.
I would watch the hell out of that, but it wasn't that, unfortunately. It was bad. It was poorly shot, but it was. I mean, there's definitely a nostalgia for it. It's awful. Like you can tell a mile away who the person's gonna be. But the disco soundtrack. There's a disco soundtrack. So you could tell that the people who made that film like thought that things were gonna go one way, did not know that disco was dying. It is glorious. Like it's worth it.
I would definitely watch.
Yeah, I would watch that. That sounds
You
fun as
should.
hell.
It's a rough one, but it's pretty good at the same time.
Yeah, that's one of the redeeming things I think about the slasher genre, in that even when they're bad, they're still kind of good.
Yeah.
With like it would be never something that I would watch alone, right, and enjoy. Like I would want to be with at least one other person and be like, hey, can you fucking believe this shit? You know, like it's so much fun that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually something that Carol Clover brings up and when she's talking about sort of the appeal of the slasher movie to audiences. And particularly, you know, we'll get into kind of how there's a set formula for them, and it's like almost like unwavering. I mean, I think we'll get into like how it's evolved, and it is like probably more prone to tinkering, I guess, now than it used to be. But that it's the same thing will happen. The audience knows exactly what's going to happen, and there's like very little deviation from that. And she said something about the idea of it being sort of a communion, like the predictability, like an audience sort of communion that you get together and you know what to expect and you know how everybody's going to react, and it's part of like being in a crowd and seeing it that makes it fun.
Yeah.
It feels kind of like that old school, like Punch and Judy show.
Yeah.
For me in that way, where you know exactly who the villain is, you know exactly who you're rooting for, and that's part of it, is like the catharsis for sure.
Definitely.
Rooting for whoever you're rooting for.
Right, and that's and the catharsis, I think, was something that they kind of focused on. I saved this quote. She said, "The art of the horror film, like the art of pornography," arts in quotation marks, by the way, the art of the horror film, like the art of pornography, is to a very large extent the art of rendition or performance, and it is understood as such by the competent audience.
I love that subtle dig.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the competent
audience.
Fuck you, intellectuals.
Yeah. Whereas, it's just to say like that, oh, why do people want to go watch this movie where the same thing happens every single time? Well, like, yeah, they're getting something out of that. It's not like they're surprised. They're not like, you know, the people who are watching slasher movies are not like, you know, sort of like goldfish in a bowl that don't know what's coming, because
Yeah.
They know what's coming because they've been seeing these movies for a long time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is, and two, I think, large aspects of that they talked about were the role of the killer and the role of the final girl. There's sort of some padding in between where like different things can happen, but for one, you definitely have a killer who is almost invariably a man.
Mm-hmm.
Except for, secret twist, but they're definitely playing on you
Except
thinking
for
it's a
secret
man.
twists,
Mhm.
yes. Also, noted as a male in gender distress is the quote.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other figure is the final girl, of course, who is the person, almost invariably a woman, who makes it to the very end of the movie. Either defeating the killer or just surviving
Just living.
the entire time for someone else to kill the killer. Supposedly kill the killer. I mean, because they don't
There's
die.
a lot of Doctor Who shit going on in the horror film. We're coming back.
Wow.
One of the most interesting things for me about Carol Clover too, and her whole concept is that she totally, because writing that book in the 90s and the 80s had happened, like slasher that was its era, was the 80s, and so
The golden era of slashers.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and starting with Psycho, progressing from there, and a lot of theory had been done prior to her, which she was definitely in conversation with and responding to, which was looking at the male gaze, which was looking at how women were treated in film, critically, rightfully so, but then Carol Clover was arguing at the expense, hey, horror films aren't the bad guy here. Like, horror films are doing something that no other type of film is doing. Like, they're allowing people to look at gender in a way that's completely countercultural. So that was what was so cool for me about Carol Clover and the final girl. She's totally arguing for, hey, it's not the male gaze for this. Like, it's feminist,
Yeah, exactly. And especially her referring to the competent audience, sort of. I think there's definitely, it's hard to sort of, like, if you don't take horror movies seriously, I think is sort of, a lot of, like, where she ends up sort of coming from is a kind of a defensive standpoint. It's like, nobody's really been looking at this. Or if you just look at that on its face, there is definitely an aspect of, like, why are you guys getting off, essentially, because that's what's happening, on seeing a bunch of women get murdered, which is definitely something that does happen in the horror movie. There's definitely like a voyeuristic, like, sort of reveling in a bunch of hot girls getting murdered.
Yeah, I was reading something about how in Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it was Johnny Depp, like, his kill scene is like a couple, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and then the female death is extended. It's slowed down to kind of savor more, I'm assuming, and it's like, I'm sure there's a lot of that going on that hasn't been analyzed, the time it takes to kill a dude because they're dead, and okay, whatever, but the women, they're like, we're gonna slow this down, we're gonna make you look at all of this. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that was something that I have noticed for a long time, but haven't really had a way to, I guess, articulate until now, sort of like putting it in context, is how much the horror, like particularly the slasher genre, really leans on depicting female terror. And that's true of the final girl, like, definitely. I think we'll sort of get into, like, the sort of profile of the final girl, whatever. She's definitely, I guess, put out there as, like, made of different stuff than her female friends who get killed. But her male friends also who get killed. But definitely there's an aspect where, like, the female characters in slasher movies, like, suffer and are terrified. Like, abjectly terrified, like, screaming and running in ways that the male characters typically are not.
They're kind of always made out to be like doofuses.
Right.
It's kind of like, oh, don't worry about it, babe, and then they get fucking slashed in the throat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of just, it's oversimplified. I don't know. They make them so dispensable.
Most of them are not really much for being characters.
No, they're caricatures for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, usually I feel like normally male characters in slasher movies are there to be like the dude who's banging the one girl who's definitely gonna die because she's having sex.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting, but they definitely get dispatched really quickly, and often before they even have a chance to know what's going on, which we could probably get into as a whole like aspect. Yeah, like they're totally clueless, often to the point where they kind of die without even knowing that there's anything going on.
Yeah, or they're just like, oh, you're crazy.
You know? Yeah, they just. Well, I guess you mentioned like getting into the final girl. Should we just hash it out real quick and let people know in case they've been waiting with bated breath to know what the final girl is?
Yeah, all these people that apparently don't know what the final girl is. So the final girl is the girl who makes it to the end of the movie. Or the boy if we're talking about Evil Dead, because I'm going to argue that Ash is the final girl for sure.
Yes!
Okay.
So, she, I put in my notes, survives the apparent unsurvivable. She typically, she makes it to the end, but more so than making it to the end, because she definitely goes through the entire gauntlet. Most of her friends get killed. She almost certainly will see almost every single body that there is and react to it visibly. She fully grasps and if we're talking about sort of horror movies being about like the looming presence of death, she definitely is the one who most fully grasps their own mortality out of the movie. And like the
odds of surviving.
The full scale of like danger that she's facing, and definitely goes through the most like terror and horror about everybody in the movie because she just lasts the longest.
Yeah, just by virtue of living, she gets to kind of see the destruction.
Right. Yes, and is generally portrayed as probably the smartest and most competent character in the movie, and that's why she makes it to the end. She's usually using, I guess, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween as an example. Laurie, she is not as like sexy or maybe even like made as like pretty as the rest of her friends.
Usually pretty androgynous.
Androgynous, kind of plain. Often has a male sounding name.
Yep, is very male, honestly.
Yes, very male. More so even probably
has a hobby that's typically, or at least in the early ones, that's typically coded as masculine.
Yes, a really masculine coded character. Definitely more like wary of things than her friends. Again, like as a sort of a Halloween reference, that she just like she the whole time is like, well, what's that over there? Like, who is that? What's going? She just like she's definitely like worried about it before anyone else is even like registering it. That's like where like the fucking like don't go in the basement trope. She's the only one who doesn't fucking go in the basement.
Yeah. Like, maybe we shouldn't split up, guys. Maybe we should stick together.
Everybody else is like, oh, that's not even a problem.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Like, Ripley in Alien is like the ultimate final girl for me. Because she's the voice of reason the whole fucking time.
Yes.
Hey, guys, let's just follow protocol. Nah, let's not do that.
Nah, these are not protocol circumstances. We're going off book, guys.
Actually Ripley's a really good example.
She is. I think Ripley's character and Jamie Lee Curtis's character in Halloween are really good kind of
pillars.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and that I know for Ripley, when they wrote that script, or at some point in the development of that film, they did not think it was going to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's the biggest thing, right? Because you do have, like, a final girl is typically masculine, like, really coded as masculine. And I think some theorist, is it Carol Clover, that does talk about, like, the masculine coding of the final girl and about how, you know, your demographic that watches those horror films are typically male. But they can identify with that character.
Yeah, and that was the Stephen King quote that I was talking about, but didn't write down. The locker room. He talks about, you know, well, men are interested in horror, and this is the thing, you know, they know at this point, she talks about the audience for horror films being predominantly male. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was at that time. I'm not sure if that's
not
totally
true today.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But that's something she quotes Stephen King as saying, you know, men like horror movies because they're watching this movie where this person, you know, survives to the end, and they're, you know, like, if you are somebody who has been sort of, I guess he said anybody who survived, like, a locker room, like, pantsing, or, like, I can't remember what else. He gave another, like, weird bullying example of something that probably happened in the fucking 50s.
Here we go. I got it.
Stephen King.
The potential audience is, okay, quote, any student who has ever had his gym shorts pulled down in phys ed or his glasses thumb rubbed in study hall. That's the quote from Stephen King.
That sounds like a euphemism, but okay.
That's what Carrie is for, apparently.
That was... Oh, yeah, he was talking about Carrie.
Because
he fucking wrote Carrie. Yeah.
Yes.
That was why. Okay. I was like, why was he talking about this? I was trying to remember. That was actually... Carol Clover noted something about the weird nature of his, like, examples. She said something about having your gym shorts pulled down is like a threat to the genitals, and the, like, glasses being, you know, fucked with is like a, you know, sort of messing with somebody's, like, essential, like, senses, like if you're threatening their vision, which I thought was maybe reading into it a little much. I think that's just Stephen King's weird old man story that is not necessarily relatable in the year 2019.
No. But it is interesting that he did that's again coded masculine. He's not, I mean, not saying women can't enjoy it, but that's a masculine experience, right?
It's coded masculine. Women don't get their gym shorts pulled down.
No, there's other shit we have to deal with, but that's not one of the things.
There's changing into your gym clothes without flashing a tit at somebody when you're like, oh my god, like, I'm a child, please.
And that was her comparison, was that, hey, he's mentioning this, but he's talking about Carrie.
But he's talking about
Carrie is a female protagonist.
Right, who he decided to write as a woman.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the, you know, a good amount of the sort of mundane horror that follows all the supernatural stuff in Carrie has to do with her getting her period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and her relationship with her mom.
Yes, and her having a really shitty, weird home life.
Yep.
And sort of being shamed for her changing body.
Oh, dirty pillows? Are you kidding me?
The dirty pillows.
Dirty pillows. I watched Carrie while I was developing, and I was like, oh god, my dirty pillows!
Oh, dirty pillows! Yeah. Some of the dialogue in Carrie is fucking wild. But yeah, that's... also, speaking of dirty pillows, I guess, the final girl, another major prominent trait, especially pointed out in the movie Scream, which is definitely, like, I think a kind of a turning point in how people, like, perceived that trope, because it just kind of straight calls it out. Is that she is not sexually active. She's not necessarily a virgin, I don't think, because there's not usually much mention made to that. Maybe it is in some movies, but she's not necessarily a virgin. Yeah. She's just not
just during the course of the film. Yeah.
She's not. And definitely is wary of men.
Yes.
Yeah.
As she should be.
Same. As also, one of the things I noticed in Halloween is at some point Laurie's friends are making fun of her for not, you know, wanting to go with a guy to homecoming.
Yeah.
And she says, guys think I'm too smart.
I love that. I love her.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like that's pretty quintessential,
right.
Final Girls. Well, she's not fucking.
So that's something I want to bring up, because that quote is perfect for it, is, I was thinking about the Final Girl, and I love horror, and I like, you know, like, have researched some of this shit and know I'm like, oh, it's feminist as hell. But then there's something about the Final Girl 2 where you could totally read it, and I think I can look at both at the same time, where it's completely anti-feminist, right? Where it's literally not like other girls. Like, she's literally not like other girls. That's so fucking anti what we want. And that thing about like, oh, they don't like me because I'm too smart, they're threatened by me. And it's like, well, I guess other girls are fucking whores and dumb, apparently.
Yeah.
So there is that interesting dichotomy where we mentioned Mallory O'Meara last time, looking at growing up as a horror fan, as a woman, looking at, oh yeah, I'm cool, I'm with that, I'm with the guys. But
right. Yeah, and I do think that probably a lot of, I mean, if we're talking my own personal experience with horror, definitely a good amount of my getting into it. I mean, I definitely just liked it on its own, but definitely a lot of my interests, because I had them. It wasn't like I got into them because of this, but because I had them, because I liked punk rock and because I liked horror and because, you know, I just like kind of dark shit in general. Kind of contributed to my being like, I'm not like the other girls, like, you know, I being like, I'm different.
Yeah.
And, that's something I think that, like, the two things kind of weirdly feed into each other. And I don't know if it's exactly a, like, chicken or the egg kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I
Final
agree.
Girls attracted to, are like those kind of, like, you know, more masculine or more, not even more masculine, but just like, you know, attracted, are women who are attracted to horror attracted to it because they see reflections of themselves, or is it just because women who are like that tend to develop that sort of attitude because of the patriarchal society we live in? I don't have an answer for that necessarily.
I don't either. Like, now I'm like, oh shit.
I don't know.
At this point now, I definitely still, like, personally kind of perceive myself as a more, like, masculine woman.
I actually listened to a podcast called, like, Being a Masculine Woman.
That sounds
really? Yeah, I listened to that. Yeah.
Well, I think, and you saying that, like, yeah, I think that's kind of what can be appealing. I guess not necessarily right, but yeah, for me, same. And that's what's appealing to me about horror a lot, and the Final Girl in general. But the danger, then comes from buying into that, oh yes, not like other girls, which we've all, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty typical phase anyway for women. I for sure went through that.
I agree. And I've also heard that a lot from men.
Really?
You're not like the other girls.
Oh my god.
God.
Oh god.
Please never do it again. Any man listening to this, fuck you for saying it, and never do it again.
Other girls. You like to drink way.
It's not too late to turn around. Yes. Don't fucking do that ever again.
Don't fucking do it. I had a guy.
We'll find you.
We will find you. And
we will kick
friends,
you to death.
We have friends that know how to kick.
Not us, but friends.
Not us, but we got contacts.
We got one. No, I had who I considered at the time a good friend say, as a rule, I don't think women are funny. Like, you're the exception. And I oh god.
Print that shit, eat it, and shit it out, and smear it on his face. Fuck that guy.
Needs to get kicked today.
Send this podcast episode to him. Fuck that guy.
As a rule. Oh god.
Yeah. What's your masculine women podcast talk about?
You know what? It's like it's very like self-helpy, and I can't remember it because I can't make new memories apparently.
Wait, okay, I want to know what everyone's like favorite Final Girl or like worst Final Girl or like new Final Girls. I don't know. I want to know like your personal connection.
I want to say the movie that we watched together. Remember?
The zombie one? The girl with all the gifts? Is that
No.
Because that one's a fucking good Final Girl too.
The one that we watched in theaters, and she's marrying this guy.
Fuck. What are you talking about? I thought of Vertigo and got mad.
Like a flash of rage.
I did. I was like ready to rant about Vertigo. I'm like, that's not a slasher film. Calm down.
I'm trying to think of movies that you guys have seen in the theater without me.
We really liked
Ready
it.
or Not?
Ready or Not?
Ready or Not, yes.
It's a great modern
I
Final
haven't
Girl.
even seen it, but...
You gotta see that shit.
Ready or Not is fantastic, and she's a great Final Girl.
Okay. Why? Tell us.
Because she's so, like, multifaceted.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. I just really did. She's got a big ass fucking bow and arrow and shit.
Hell yeah.
And she also, like, there's people just accidentally dying, which is
Hilarious.
Hilarious.
It's such a funny movie.
it's great. It's great. It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, so I think that as of now is my favorite modern final girl.
See, because I was thinking about the other one we watched, which it's hard to pick a favorite, but like The Girl with All the Gifts, which is a zombie film, but not traditional. It feels to me almost like a final girl film in a very not traditional way, right? But she is. Like, she is the final girl.
Yeah.
Like, she does survive. And
It was very good.
it kind of, I mean, I don't know if it turns the zombie genre on its head, but it does in a way where you very much identify with the zombie.
Yeah.
In a way that feels like a more modern trend anyway, because you have
That line blurring between good and evil.
you do, and you have
And,
I'm
like,
thinking
empathy.
of the Creature movie by Guillermo del Toro that I'm blanking.
Shape of Water.
Shape of Water does the same thing.
Yeah.
It's called the fish fucking movie.
It's called
Excuse me.
Where's the dick?
Ma'am?
Does it have scales?
It's
I
called-
need to know.
It's called I Need to See the Fish Dick.
Where's the fanfic on that? Like, I'm sure it's
out
there.
We'll look at AO3 one day.
I'm sure it's there. I regret even asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have that trend of identifying with a monster, but then that's such a great. I think that's been going on forever because that's been happening with Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, with Frankenstein, it's sad as hell. Like,
yes.
You better believe you identify with the monster in
So
that
this
one.
was another like point that Carol Clover made was that an argument can be made that like, oh well, the male audience is not identifying with the final girl; they're identifying with the killer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it's flawed in a lot of ways to think that because the killer oftentimes is not even identified until like way late in the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the sequels and shit. Like,
Right,
we
exactly.
don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Much
They're
about
kind of a shadowy figure at first, and then also like that is valid on some level, but it's like there's a switch that takes place. There's a first you're kind of during the part where the killer's murdering the victims, where you just are really kind of rooting for the winner, like.
Yeah,
it's fun.
whoever makes
It's
it.
super fun and cathartic in a kind of weird pornographic way, like she put it. To see the killer, murder all these people, and a lot of time you're kind of rooting for it because the movie portrays the victims in sort of less than flattering ways, I guess, most of the time.
Oh yeah, you're like, yes, you deserve to die immediately. You're stupid.
Fuck you, idiot.
Yeah.
So you are kind of identifying with the killer at first, and then at some point it switches. At first you are the man, and then it switches to you being the woman towards the end, which I think was kind of a neat observation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of, going back to like tropes and horror, like it's very much horror is obsessed with its archetypes, more than other genres. And you have to have, mostly you have to have the unknown, and then you have someone you can identify with and empathize with.
Yeah.
And so I don't give a fuck about the backstory of the killer. Like, give me as little as I need to know. Like, give me Michael Myers, like, in Halloween, in the first one, perfect. I don't need to know any more than that. But, that's enough to go on, but I don't need to know any more.
Or like, this is why Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre are amazing movies, because
You don't need to know anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to know shit about Leatherface.
No.
The man is wearing a skin on his face and
Come on.
wielding a chainsaw and goes like, woo! That's all I need to know.
You made him sound like a turkey.
That's it. That's what he is.
It's Thanksgiving, okay?
Take notes, George Lucas. We don't
Oh,
need the
God.
fucking backstory on our fucking bad
On
guys.
fucking
I don't want
everybody.
We don't need it. We want fucking mystery. We want
Yes.
a character empathized with, but that's what's really interesting. It's kind of like joke's on you, right? Predominantly male audience, at least in the 80s and 90s of horror, is that it's a fucking woman. You're identifying with a woman, and that's cool, and everyone's chill with that. I mean, because I working in a library, like the way people are obsessed with gender is funny in the way they consume their media. I have parents that are more concerned than their kids, right? Where I say, well, this book's really good. Well, this has a princess on the cover. My son won't like that.
Yeah,
And they say it in
he
full
won't read
earshot.
that.
They say it in full earshot of their son. And I'm like, well, he fucking won't now.
Yeah.
Because apparently you think that matters.
Right.
So that's what is so cool about horror, where they do stuff. But I think, you were bringing up way back. I mean, obviously this does stuff with gender that's different, but there's really interesting stuff slasher-wise where there's some queer slasher films that have come out more recently, but then there's queer representation in slasher films that have been beforehand were super problematic. Like you have Psycho, and you have, I mean, essentially Silence of the Lambs too, right? You have like the queer person, that's the fucking bad guy.
Well, it's actually something that, so that's something that also the Carol Clover points out, is that she points out the killer is a man in gender distress.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Almost invariably.
Yes.
And as Norman Bates, you know, wearing
Norman
his
Bates.
mother's clothes.
The terrible scene at the end where they explain everything.
Oh, God.
That was the producers made him have, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like one of the
that
best.
Like some code shit?
Like the worst scenes of all time. Like it's voted like one of the worst scenes of all time. And I don't think Hitchcock likes it either, but they had him put it in.
Yeah, like, our audience is stupid, they're not gonna
They're
get
dumb,
it.
and we need people to have like a case of the not gays.
To wear women's clothing.
Yes, exactly.
And they point out that there's sort of like there's not so for like male villains and killers or whatever that like have like a sexual like appetite to themselves, that's a whole different genre of film that we're not even getting into right now.
Right, because most of them, the slashers are asexual or perverse in some way.
Yes, they they don't have like an interest in that, and that's they were pointing out in Texas Chainsaw Massacre at some point when they have like Sally like in the house. She says like, "Please let me go. I'll do anything you want," and they just like mock her for it. Like they just like she's like crying, and they're like, "Wah, wah." Like they just like it's like they have like no even understanding of it. And that's just definitely not what they're interested in.
Yeah.
It's like kind of they're like sort of in, I don't know if I would call them in like gender distress so much as just in like Arrested Development. Like they seem like they're actually kind of like children.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that's something where like the male killer is not like a paragon of masculinity. I mean, like Michael Myers apparently murdered his sister because he couldn't handle her being sexual, is sort of the implication. Or maybe he just was really into murdering women forever and just that was his first opportunity.
Just fresh out the womb, knife in hand.
Yeah.
Don't like it.
He was dressed like a clown too. I kind of forgot about that.
My favorite scene in the original Halloween is him driving that fucking station wagon or whatever the fuck it is, and it's fucking ridiculous, and I love it.
Oh, where he's like peeking out the window. Yeah.
And it's meant to be menacing, but it's
just
funny.
Like, no.
It's just great. Like if you had cut that with other. That's why music is so important, right? Because
Benny Hill music,
dope as hell. But if you cut that with anything else, I bet that's on YouTube.
Yeah, there is like, dude. Almost every horror movie has this scene that I just think is very funny.
That just makes me fucking giggle.
Yeah, like unintentionally very funny.
Yeah,
it's like Ron Swanson giggle.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh
and you could be like fucking Hereditary, where I was in the theater with people who were just laughing at the whole thing, and after a while, I was kind of like, you know what, this is a little bit funny.
Bizarre. Yeah. I saw have you guys seen The Perfection? Have we talked about that?
I heard it was terrible, so I just never watched it.
So that's a film, I guess you could kind of say Final Girl-ish. Like, it's definitely influenced by that trope.
Right.
Or, I hated it. I did hate it, 100%.
Okay. Yeah.
But, yeah, man, I hated it because it was this heavy-handed pseudo-feminism, right? And I hate that shit because I'd like real feminism, just normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill. And it didn't do it at all. But this other film that came out this year, called Haunt?
Haunt. Oh yes,
yeah,
I've been meaning to watch that.
It's so much better.
Is it? It is on Shudder. Is it on Shudder?
Mm-hmm.
So that one, it's solid. I mean, it's just a solid slasher flick. It has a pretty basic plot. You know, it's nothing that's going to be innovative and groundbreaking. But I don't think it needs to be.
We don't need that all of the time.
No, we do not.
We're getting it.
That's exhausting.
Almost too often.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's
just give us normal shit.
Right. It's also something like I don't see, and this is the issue I guess I have increasingly with slasher movies, like modern slasher movies, like I said, slasher movies not normally my go-to genre anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I don't need one with a message. I don't want that. I don't want a message in my horror. And this is actually, we talked about this. We talked about this in the last episode we recorded, but we couldn't use the audio because we were crunching too hard on Hot Cheetos. I was talking about we watched the new Halloween, and I thought it was so bad. I thought it was so hokey.
We talked about the podcasters.
It's because, yes, the podcasters is really lame, but it was also just, like, I just felt like it was so desperate to, like, say something. I was like, just be a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really need that shit where it's like, we're talking about trauma. Like, I don't want that.
Lori,
you don't
your
want that?
trauma.
Yeah, they're literally
explain it, please.
in the dialogue are like, Lori, you need to get over your trauma. Like,
yeah.
please stop.
Well, and that's how, like, because I'm okay with it. I guess I'm okay with it having a message if it's very, like, almost hokey, I guess, in a way. Where, okay, so for The Perfection, for, anyone who's seen it, for me it's very heavy-handed, hitting your head, hitting it over the head. Please kill me now. I don't want to hear about it.
Right.
But then you have Haunted, which is...
The Haunt.
Sorry, Haunt, yes. Very typical slasher film. A bunch of dumbass teens go to a haunted house that's, guess what, full of fucking psychopaths, So, typical, you could read that. From the first 2 minutes, you could read it. And there is kind of a feminist bent to it. Like, there is a final girl, and she does have a history of trauma, which is a whole thing that's problematic that I guess we could talk about too, but we don't have to get into. But, so that's problematic. But at the same time, it's just very simple, and it does what it does. And if it's fun enough with the action, I'm cool with it.
Right.
Halloween wasn't fun. I had an okay time, but it wasn't fun enough with the action for me. It wasn't fun.
Michael Myers is, like, just a good-ass villain.
He's very...
He's just a good-ass killer.
Stoic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Yeah, I'm into it. He's, he's just gotten down. He's a pro. The kills were all real fun. But, yeah, I just, like, I wasn't into the, like...
No, I don't think
I just wasn't into, like, the dialogue in the movie.
But I don't think it was real fun. I think the original was real fun, but I feel like the remake was it was heavy-handed.
Just the part that's, like, Michael killing people's fun, because that's just fun.
And the podcast, you're like, I fucking hate you guys, I hope you die.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
I made it like that.
It is kind of a weird... I wish I could put my finger on exactly why I didn't love that remake. But it's what you're saying. I just wish I had, like, a whole thing.
Yeah. This is also, to me, horror is a genre that, like, is sort of... I guess, like, it's more permissible to me to be problematic. If you're just trying to... If you're trying to accomplish something, like... I mean, it's like... Well, as we were talking earlier about, like... Or we were talking the other day about, like, Rob Zombie movies. Which I know you guys are not, like, as well-versed in.
Yeah.
They're problematic as fuck.
Sorry, Pat.
Sorry, Pat.
Sorry, Pat.
Not.
Well, no, not me. I'm not sorry.
I'm not sorry either.
I like Rob Zombie.
I
like Rob Zombie, but it's definitely, like, it's not... There's, like, zero wokeness in Rob Zombie movies. Like, it's very problematic, and it's just something that, like... That's just what it is. Like, it's working out, like, it's just working out, like, ideas, I guess, is sort of how I see it. And it's free to do that. It's, like, it's not a place where you have to worry about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's definitely a point where it's, like it's just kind of boring. Sometimes you watch some stuff that's, like, I don't know, where it just doesn't have anything interesting to do. But, yeah, I don't see it. I think... the problematicism of a lot of horror movies is kind of like just part of the whole thing.
So I agree with you, but I also want to know, like, I want to know why you think that, I guess, because I think for me, like, horror is kind of a space to, like, play with things and kind of fuck around.
Yes.
But is that why you think, because I don't know Rob Zombie at all, but I agree generally about your assumption of the genre of just
being less
make mistakes, do some things. But I don't know why that is. Why do I feel that way about it? Why do I give it that allowance?
I think it's because horror is just kind of inherently feminist, just making men as scared as
Interesting.
We are all
Yeah,
of the
yeah, I
time.
think
Interesting.
And it's
Okay.
just free reign to explore things that are disgusting.
Absolutely.
It's like,
Things
you want
that
to
we
see something
shy-
fucking gross and fucked up?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to a
just
degree,
Candace in a
when
trench
you're
coat.
doing something problematic,
Hey, kids!
Do you want to see something gross and disgusting that you will never forget?
come to my van. I guess the movies.
That's it. That's the genre.
That's it. That's the genre. And it's yeah, so it's dangerous in a way. And so you
Yeah.
understand it to be such. It's not advertising itself as anything else. And to a degree, everything you see is understood to be fucked up. So yeah, if it's portraying something that's bad, like yeah, of course you know it's bad. It's not saying like, yeah, it's cool to murder women.
No.
Like that's not the point.
You need to be good in order to have a message.
The end. Period.
That's it.
You need to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else stop.
Yeah.
It's true.
Get good, noob. Just fucking be better.
Good.
Practice first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
true though. You have to be, the story has to be solid. And that's, that's how I felt about Terrifier, where it was like, the special effects are dope. They're so
Yeah.
cool. They're so good. And the plot is like, there is no plot. And there's some short films. There was a couple short films. And I'm like, yeah, you did a 20-minute, who fucking cares, dude? Like, you can't do that as a feature length. You have to prove something
Yeah,
else. You have to take something else.
Stay in the short film category if
Or-
you have no...
Fucking grow. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they didn't, for me anyway. I
Do
don't know.
better or stay short.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
I will
No.
stay short.
From the mouth of the shortest one of us, so you know it's true.
True.
Stay short.
Yeah.
Aw, Gabby deserves to be so much taller.
Metaphorically, she is taller.
Yeah. Gabby and I rewatched Martyrs this
Yeah.
past
Oh, fuck.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friend that we watched it with, he just looked at us and he was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, he's like, what did you make us watch?
That's how I felt when I first watched
Yeah.
and ever only watched
Yeah.
Martyrs. I've never
Yeah.
watched
That
it.
has, you know what, I didn't even remember this. Like, I did a really bad job of remembering Martyrs to the point where I started watching this shitty remake and didn't realize it was the shitty remake until, like, maybe 25 minutes in. It was like, wait a minute.
It wasn't
Yeah.
even in the right language and
I
you're
was
like, maybe.
I don't remember it being this bad.
Yeah.
That had some like commentary on on gender that I wasn't that I like kind of forgot about. That they like, particularly on like female suffering being like worth more
Absolutely.
than male suffering,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think that's like sort of like it's like it is like kind of a currency in like horror movies is like, yeah, female suffering is like where it's at.
It's like Monsters Inc. Like
Yeah, they don't
children's
even-
screams
Yes.
are worth more.
Exactly. They don't
Yes.
even like focus on like they don't like they focus so little on like male suffering that like most of the dudes are just dead. Like,
Yeah.
For like a third
In
of the
5
movie.
seconds and then
Yeah.
you immediately don't care.
Exactly.
Yes.
Unless we're talking about Evil Dead.
Yes.
In
Because
which-
Ash is
Yeah.
the final girl.
Ash spends the entirety of the movie suffering. He gets covered in blood. It's the same sort of fucking like rebirth through death
Yeah.
that the final girl goes through. He has to bury his fiance.
Yep.
It's just
I dig that. I
Ash
approve
is
that
my
reading.
favorite final girl.
I didn't
Is it
know-
fucked up that my favorite final girls are all dudes?
Well, I think it's funny that
Like LL Cool J and Deep Blue Sea? I'm about it.
Yeah. Well, Evil Dead is a horror comedy, right?
Yes.
So it is funny that like a dude final girl, it's like haha, played for laughs.
Yeah, that's really interesting
Yeah,
too, right?
Yeah.
We should rewatch it with
Evil
that.
Dead, the first Evil Dead is not as much of a comedy as Evil Dead 2.
No.
For
Right,
sure.
but they totally embrace it. Like, you know, they
Oh,
saw it,
yeah.
they're like, oh fuck yeah, let's hype this shit.
Yeah. You know what I didn't notice before? I rewatched both. I rewatched both Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, like just for Halloween's sake. In Evil Dead 2, when he loses his hand, there't like a stack of books that's like in the shot, and on the top of it is A Farewell to Arms.
Oh my god. That's so bad.
Shit kills me.
No. Wow.
I love it.
That's
Good.
fantastic.
This
Yeah.
is another thing I was thinking about though, because you're talking about like Buffalo Bill being a
Yeah.
sort of problematic portrayal of a like gender distressed killer. Is it like he was like based on Ed Gein,
Mhm.
Yep.
who actually did have a like woman skin suit.
He did.
Yeah.
Absolutely
He literally did.
He
He
did.
had
also
like
had a
a
nipple
little
belt.
like he had like he had a nipple belt and he had a little like boob vest that he
Yeah.
would put on
Mhm.
and like go outside and like dance in the moonlight or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's like how he felt like the most at home was when he was like wearing a woman's skin.
Yeah.
It's like real life. Like real life is kind of problematic. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have noticed.
I don't know if you guys
wait.
knew.
What?
But we don't live in a utopia.
Yeah.
It's actually a fucking dystopia.
I think so. No, I think you're right. Well, I think part of the problem too is the like fixation on that because with Ed Gein, like it's not just one movie we've had based on him, right? It's a lot. And
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs.
absolutely. Psycho.
Psycho.
What was the other one that...
I don't know. It was on horror trivia.
It was in horror trivia,
fuck.
which we got 3rd place.
Yeah.
So we did okay, everyone.
We did...
Third.
I think we did okay.
I think we probably fucking ruled. 3rd is great.
We were good. We don't know anything about the not Friday the 13th. It was Nightmare on Elm Street that we don't know shit about.
I can't list the titles. I don't fucking know. I can tell you all about the fucking... I can tell you about
Sorry
the second one.
to this man.
I'm sorry to this man. Karina did a really good job though with the questions because they were fucking hard.
Yeah, shout out to
very
our
hard.
homie Karina who did horror trivia and did it so good that she stumped us to placing 3rd.
We're not good at tests,
I
but
can't
we'll
do
drunk
it.
talk about shit all
Yeah, we
day.
don't test well.
I can't tell you titles. I can just tell you all about the homoerotic undertones.
Right. Ask us about the undertones.
Tell me about that. Yeah, so, I don't remember what we were talking about, because we were talking about homoerotic
We're
undertones.
talking about life being problematic. Or
Life
something.
is problematic.
Buffalo Bill and shit. Oh, we were talking about how all the movies are obsessed with Ed Gein, but he's not even that interesting
He's
of a serial killer.
Well, and that's the thing is I think the focusing on that and looking at, I think part of the problem is the horror can kind of center around the supposed like queerness, right, of the killer. And especially with the Psycho thing, right, where the producers were like, here, let's have this whole fucking explanation scene that's boring and terrible and no one likes. And it's all about how, he's the queerness of him, how he doesn't fit in a gender that makes sense to us. And so that's definitely problematic, and it's something that deserves more looking at. But I think having some queer horror films is great, but more would be better.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm definitely here for, I guess, different takes on the formula, on the genre, on the subgenre, specifically of the slasher. And that's, we talked a little while back about Scream.
And how you hate it?
Ariel,
I
I
hate
think
it.
you were like,
I hate it.
Fuck it in its meta-ness or whatever.
I don't like it.
I at the time had never seen it, but I watched it recently.
Yeah, Candace and I were talking about this on the way here.
I
how
actually
they-
really like Scream.
I don't like it.
I
No.
do too.
And honestly, partially because of its like we were talking about sort of like horror comedy and how like subverts the expectations or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It because of the way that it subverts like the final girl trope, I think like puts its final girl through even more shit than most slasher movies do.
Because it makes you look at it. It's like, hey, this is the thing. Look at what we're gonna do to her now.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Because it establishes like, here's where we are.
Yes.
Now hold our beer or whatever. Like, it's like
Scream is very hold my beer.
definitely. But
just-
the point, like the idea, like, oh, she can't make it to the end because now she fucked.
Yeah.
Like, but it's like even worse than that kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's good. I think it works as both a horror movie and a comedy, which is like kind of rare.
Yeah, it's meta, it's funny, and it's still a little scary.
Yeah.
And it's got Drew Barrymore in it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, the
For a hot
first scene
second.
is a killer.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing that bugs me is like they feel like they're being. I feel like they made that film. They're like, we're hot shit. Like we're doing shit that's never been done before, and at that point, I feel like pointing out the trope wasn't that original. Although they're probably the first film to like get meta about it. But then, even like with the Drew Barrymore shit, like that's Psycho. Like you're doing Psycho.
Yeah.
like in 2 minutes instead of like 25.
I liked it though, kind of.
It wasn't for me.
I think that Scream was kind of formulated to be shown to mainstream audiences, so it gives them that quick recap. It's like, this is where we are. You know what I mean?
Right. That's true.
I hate that though.
It also it is like it's a little annoying that it gives like a primer on like how to watch a horror movie. It's like,
oh yeah, I mean, I
fucking get good. Life is problematic. You can do it.
Sounds like a very weird chant.
That's the chant we're gonna do before we do the podcast. It's problematic. We're gonna take a shot and we're gonna say "Hail Satan," and then we're gonna go, "Life is problematic. Life is problematic."
It's like there's no place like home.
Yeah.
Click your heels. Life is problematic.
This is fine.
This is fine. This is fine. I like that as a chant.
Yeah.
That's how I go about my life.
Yeah. This is fine.
Pointed out about the movie Blowout was that they're casting for a horror movie in it, and what they're looking for the victims is tits and a scream. For the audition, all you need to do is show your tits and give a scream.
Why is that not our podcast name?
Tits and a scream. It's definitely gonna be our sign off now. But it's like, you know, they like do all these auditions where like all these girls are showing their tits and screaming or whatever, and they can't like find a pair of tits and a scream that like are both good enough, so they cast two different people, one for the tits and one for the scream.
Yes. Yes.
Which I feel like is kind of I feel like that's a pretty good distillation of like the victims in horror movies.
What do you guys think you're best for? Your tits or your scream?
Honestly, right now, my scream is like silent because my voice is gone, so I'm probably good on the tits. Like I'm probably only good for the tits at this point.
I feel like I would only sarcastically scream, so hopefully my tits have some value.
Are you getting like legit murdered? You just sarcastically.
Oh no!
Please don't kill me, mister.
Sir!
Please!
Sir!
I would be truly terrified, and I would still be like, please no! So hopefully my tits have some value. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely tits because I just nervous giggle at everything. And also my back hurts, so yeah, definitely tits.
It's gotta be the tits. It's gotta be.
I'm probably...
Your back hurts, you might as well have good tits.
That's it. God bless you.
So we're all tits, we need to scream in
Fuck!
here.
Who's a screamer?
Valeria!
Oh, true.
We
friend
need
Valeria.
to superimpose her
She's
scream.
a really good screamer and also really bad at watching horror movies.
It's hilarious. I love it so much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, she tried to listen to our first episode of our podcast and said that it was too scary. She turned it off.
Wait!
Do I have anything?
Do I?
Oh, do I? Do I? Not really.
Okay.
No, that's pretty much all I have.
I kind of wanted to end on a quote. There's a quote in Mallory O'Meara's book, the Lady from the Black Lagoon, where she says, "Women are the most important part of horror because by and large, women are the ones that horror happens to."
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of encapsulates it so well. Why, unless it's overtly anti-feminist, that I believe that horror in and of itself is just kind of feminist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like where like the entire genre comes from in a lot of ways, is just observing female terror in both a voyeuristic way, but in a way that, you know, invites you to sort of identify with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Follow us on all the stuff. NYFG Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Not Your Final Girl on Facebook. And yeah, definitely join us on Facebook because we got a lot of people. Definitely follow us on Twitter because we don't have enough Twitter followers.
Make a Twitter and follow us.
Make a Twitter and follow us, please, sir. And ma'am.
Ma'am.
Thank you very much to Gabby Steiger for our beautiful artwork.
We love it.
To our own Ariel Dyer for our cool song.
Yes.
Including our cool Final Girl song.
Oh, what's your band camp? Plug your band camp.
I don't know.
It's Ariel Dyer. No, listen,
Probably
I
Ariel
know.
Dyer.
It's Ariel Dyer. Bandcamp. Candace.com.
Thank
Listen
you,
to Ariel's
Gabby.
music, please.
I'm her manager now.
She's my manager now.
I'm gonna take 10%.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so
then
pay money so that we can all get paid.
and Phantom Stranger Inc. for giving us the dope cover art.
Yes.
Our friend Pat,
Pat.
avid Rob Zombie fan,
Who's unfollowed us by now.
who's definitely unfollowed and cannot hear us.
I'm
He's
sorry
waging
to
a
this
war.
man.
Sorry to this man. Thank you to Claire Holland for our namesake, Not Your Final Girl. Buy her book, read her poetry, follow her on Twitter.
Yes, she's writing new
Claire
poetry.
Holland.
She
She's
is.
And I want to
writing new
fucking know what it
poetry.
is.
May you be covered in blood, like one of my other favorite final girls, Sarah from The Descent.
Nice.
Mostly just because she falls into a pool of blood and viscera, and I think that's kind of metal. So, yeah, this is not your final girl.
Keep it creepy.
Keep it creepy,
creepy.
get your tits and your screams out.
Fall in
We're
the
all
vat of
tits
blood.
here, apparently.
We're all
Fall
tits
into
here.
a vat of
blood. Oh, we are going to be on all major streaming apps, services. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, I think Google Podcasts as well. So we are readily available. I don't know.
We're here for your every need.
Yeah.
Yeah, please just find us and listen to us jabber.
Yeah, we definitely had a lot more listens than I was expecting, so, like, fucking thank you.
Yeah, keep
it
on
up.
going. We're gonna get better at it, I
Yeah.
promise.
Shout out to the one person in Texas.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, Texan buddy.
That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Keep it creepy, my babies.
Keep it creepy.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Also, keep it creepy.
I concur.